How to ruin a man in 3 easy steps. My name is Ayanda. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to ruin a man in 3 easy ways. But before we get to that, last week I was 50 pages in The Girl with the Louding Voice, and if you've watched my video, you know that I did not like the book. I came here to tell you that I finished the book. The reviews on my Instagram and on my Facebook, and I'd like to apologize to myself and to the book and to advise you to not judge a book by its first 50 pages. It's good, and I'm surprised that no one called me out on, well, I like that no one called me out and allowed me to just experience the book for myself, and I'm here to just say it's amazing. I recommend it. 5 stars from me. Oh yeah, I like the book. I enjoyed all the characters. I liked the development of the story. I liked the honesty of it. I feel like she was able to capture the experience of African women and African girls in such an interesting and truthful manner. So I recommend it. 5 stars. Yeah, so let's get into the video. Step number 1, do not validate him as a child. Now, I'm sure we all know that men are not born as men. Men are born as children, men are born as boys. So how do you make sure that the boy you're raising becomes a hardened man? How do you make sure that they are detached from their emotions, they are detached from their reality, and they just curl into themselves, basically? The first step is obviously to invalidate their feelings, and when you invalidate one's feelings, you make sure that you minimize them as much as possible. When they're going through something, you must just not take note of it. Don't take it as a serious emotion. Don't validate the emotions. Don't recognize what they're feeling as a genuine feeling that needs to be acknowledged or respected or to be healed. Just look at whatever they're going through as nothing of importance. That's how you invalidate boy children. You just look at their experience as not as important as that of boy children. Well, I don't have to say this, but for the most part, we all know when girl children are crying, they get more comfort than when boy children are crying. There's this expectation, and which is the invalidation, that boy children must be aware of how not to use their emotions or how not to express their emotions. So if a boy child falls in the playground or is hit by another child or is hit by another girl child, there's usually the expectation that the boy child should have won the fight, or at least not even express their defeat. Do not cry about it. Why are you crying? So the first step, invalidate. What does the invalidation do? It brings shame on the child. It makes them feel like they should not express their emotions. It makes them feel like they should not even bother having those emotions to begin with, so they suppress the emotions. When you validate children, you make them feel heard, you make them feel understood, and you are able to calm them down faster. When you invalidate them, you make them lash out more. And for the most part, that is the emotion that is encouraged in boys. You invalidate them to a point where the only emotion that they can express is anger. And when they express anger, you sort of accept it as a common trait in boys, or you in fact encourage it in them because it is seen as a manly or a boyish emotion. Validation is defined as the recognition or the affirmation of one's emotions or experiences. When you validate someone, you're saying, hey, I see you. I understand you're frustrated. I understand that you're heartbroken. I understand that you're going through this emotion or through this experience. You acknowledge it. You don't minimize it. You don't treat it as not important, or you don't see it, or you don't use it to shame them into hiding it. That's what validating means. And the first step that you use when you want to make sure that you corrupt, basically it's corruption. The first step that you use to corrupt a man or you corrupt boys is to ensure that you invalidate them and you shame them for their emotions. You make them not want to experience them, or when they experience them, you make them want to hide them. Why? Because there's a belief that boys should not be having those emotions. When you validate a child, it gives them problem-solving skills. It helps them label their emotions. When you are able to say to a child, when you're feeling this way, it is this way. When you're feeling this, it is that. When you're feeling this, it is that. They are able to identify their emotions and in turn be able to address them accordingly. But when you invalidate them, you disable them from being able to clearly identify their emotions, which also disables them from clearly expressing them as well. And for the most part, We teach this to young boys at a very tender age, by the way. You see a point where when they're feeling anxious or they're feeling scared or they're feeling sad, instead of expressing that they're feeling that way so that they can address it, the problem solving skill aspect of it, their inability to solve their feelings or to solve their experiences comes from the fact that when they are feeling anything other than anger, they then mask it as aggression and anger. When they begin masking everything as aggression, when they are not given a platform, when they're invalidated in their experiences of any other human emotion, they also now lack emotional intelligence, because you cannot have emotional intelligence if you're not experiencing your emotions. You must first experience your emotions and then have the emotional intelligence to deal with other people and to deal with your own emotions as well. So at the fundamental level of raising boy children, there is this distinct belief that to raise a boy child, you must just have an iron fist. They must not be able to experience life in a way that girls their age can. Which is crazy, because it means now you're already preparing them to be men, right? You're already ruining them for manhood. Do you see where I'm going with this? When you invalidate boys' emotions, they end up having a low self-esteem, they end up having low self-worth, and they end up having no empathy, they have no emotional intelligence, and they also have a low tolerance for frustration. When boys are having, well, for the most part, boy children also tend to not have much tolerance for challenges. Sometimes when you see them when they're playing, they are quick to anger and they're quick to hit their mates. They also have this tendency to also just kick their toys. When they cannot do something, they just resort to kicking it or to punching it or just throwing themselves to the floor. That is because there is also this ingrained belief in society that when you invalidate in people's minds, it's not I'm invalidating my child, it's I'm training him to fit into the world. When they believe that when your child is soft or when your boy child is soft, they're not going to fit into the model of what a boy child is in society. Boy children are rough in the world, so if your child is seen as soft or is seen as emotional, I think there's also the fear that they're not going to cope well in the world. Therefore, people tend to toughen them up in the home in order to prepare them for the real world in which men are meant to be tough and boys are violent and all of those things. I hope you're understanding my gist. Step number 2, make him man up. What does manning up mean? At this point, you're no longer dealing with a child. You're dealing with a semi-adult, someone that's entering their teens or someone that's already in their teens. This is where most damage to boys happens. Now, you may be wondering, how, Njani? Well, it's easy. This is where most people find their identity. It's where they establish who they're going to be in their adulthood. And it's such a tender and difficult stage as well, because they're developing as well. They're coming in. There's a lot of self-image issues, and there's also the identity crisis of entering the stage where you're meant to be acting like an adult, but you're still a child, and all of those things. This is where you find cases where most boys lose themselves. The innocence or the bit of childishness that was remaining in them, despite what had happened in their formative years, is now completely getting diminished by the reality of the world that they're entering into. There's the peer pressure to appear cool and to appear strong, and then there's just the reality societal pressure that, okay, you're now 14, you are 14, you're a man, come on. It's quite ridiculous, because these are young children. At 14, most girls are getting pampered and are getting treated like eggs and are being protected from the world. They're being protected from boys. And on the other hand, the boys are being trained to be villains and are being trained to be as rough as possible. It's almost like these people are the same age, but you're training them for two completely different experiences. The girl children are being prepared for a world that's soft, a world that's just homey, a world that's just warm. They're just being caged in, and then the boys are just thrust into the lion's den. They're saying, okay, you can come back at 9 p.m, it's fine. Okay, you can do that, it's fine. You must get into a fight. You must assert your dominance. This is where most boys are forced to assert their dominance. And I get this is an age where they are also experiencing relationships between them and girls their age, or them and sex and and substances and stuff like that, for the most part they are encouraged to explore those things, whereas the girl children are being told, no, you must wait, you're still young, you must wait. But 14-year-old boys are being given cigarettes and are given alcohol, things that they should not be consuming at that age. Why? Because they're already seen as more mature than they actually are, which is a dangerous thing. I mean, I'm getting angry just thinking about it, but there is rarely any pushback from people when people treat young boys as men at that particular age, especially when you live in areas like where I'm from, where after a certain rite of passage, someone is no longer seen as a child at all. They are now treated as a man, despite how young they are and despite how much development that they must still go through as a child. They are thrust into this world where you just move from being taken care of to now having to be the one that's taking care of the family. And it gets worse in families where there's no patriarchal figure, there's no father. You find that the boys are now forced to be heads of the family and are forced to have this tolerance for challenges, and are forced to not express any emotion because, well, you're the man of the house. Now you are forcing boys to mature earlier than they should. Now it means there's this how do I explain it? A skip in their development, where instead of being exposed to children their age and learning life in a slow pace, or in a pace that would not necessarily what am I trying to say? You make them want to assert dominance. Even when they are younger than their female siblings, you want them to have dominance over their siblings. You want them to have dominance over their mothers. You just want them to believe that because you were born as a boy, you are therefore expected to act like a 40-year-old man. And by the way, there is not even a good example of what a healthy 40-year-old man is in society, because those men were also raised in the same way to say, okay, prepare for the big world, and now they're in the big world and they're just hardened as rocks. And you have a situation where the boys at that age, I mean, you're in your teens, you're just entering your teens, you are trying to identify yourself as a person, you're trying to learn about your body and all of those things, but at the same time, you must head a family. What does heading a family look like for a 14-year-old boy? What is that? Because there's not even there's no class, there's no education, there's no comprehensive guide by men to say this is how you head a home. It's actually just these, I can't even call them laws. You just enforce these beliefs on boys to say, okay, as a boy, you're the head of the home, you're not gonna cry. Be strong. Okay, be strong and do what? Does not expressing your emotion qualify you to head a home? What does heading a home mean in a patriarchal sense, or in a masculine sense? What is to head a home? You know what I mean? And I think the confusion in that stage as well, and the pressure to be this person that leads a home, is part of the reason that boys end up just completely losing themselves during their teen years, because you don't know what you're doing. No one is telling you what to do, but you know you should not cry. You know you should not express that you're having a hard time. You know that you should not ever even dare to rely on your sisters or on your mother. They don't tell you what to do, but you know what not to do. Because generally, with the experience of the men around you, you see how men act. Men don't express themselves. Men don't tell you that they're feeling weakened, or they don't tell you that they are feeling overwhelmed by the responsibilities that they have. The understanding. Remember, in the beginning, I told you that sometimes I believe that some mothers or some families or people that are raising children end up just enforcing this attitude or this belief on boys that you should not express yourself, you should not be emotional, you should not be soft, because they want them to fit into the world. I think this is the stage where you see the fitting in matter more in their teen years, because you cannot afford to be anything other than aggressive and strong. And that is after we've even identified that we don't know exactly what strong means in the sense, because if strength is defined as people just not expressing their emotions, or boys not expressing their emotions, then we know that's not strong. But with their perception, that's what strength is, that's what being a man is. So it matters for them to fit in. You're at this stage where you're trying to identify yourself, you're trying to identify your politics, and you don't want to stand out. You even sexually, not sexually, even with the sexuality part, unless you are heterosexual, it's very difficult to fit in, and most people end up just also keeping to themselves and pretending to be heterosexual because the world is not, or the masculine world or the heteronormative world is not prepared to deal with a boy that's not clearly cisgendered. You understand? I hope you understand. So you're at this point where the teenagers, the boys are in their teens, and now they are having feelings. You know, they want to date girls, they want to get into relationships, but also they've been trained that they're better than girls. When you have emotions, you're a girl. That's so stupid. That's so girly. You punch like a girl, etc. How does a boy that has been taught to not behave like a girl, or that has been taught to view femininity or girl children as weak, engage with girls in a romantic sense, or even if it's not a romantic sense, just engaging with women and girls in the world? How do you think those people or boys at that age see and experience women? It's obviously in a very degrading manner. They demean women and they demean girls. They already think the reason they think they're heads of homes is because they already believe that they're better than women and girls because they were born boys. You understand? This is where you see the dominance as well come in when they are engaging with girls, and the violence also start to come out, because remember, the only emotion that they are meant to be expressing is aggression. So going forward, even when they deal with other boys and they deal with women and girls, they use an iron fist because that's how they've been trained. Step number 3, you treat him as a rock. At this point now, they are no longer a teenager, early adulthood, all the way until they die. You treat men as people that do not have emotions. This is a double-edged sword. There's people that are now at the stage where, remember, the girls, when they were younger, were being trained to be housewives and to be mothers and all of those things. Fine, we are now all adults. It is time now to create families. Who do you create families with? You're going to create families with the boy that has been taught to demean girls. This is how you ruin a man. And then, now that you are in a relationship with a man, or are dating a man, or are married to a man, some women like that the man is a rock. They feel protected, they feel cared for. They're saying, oh my goodness, my man is a man. When I'm crying, he remains strong. I never see him shed a tear. I love that for me. And then there's the other side that is saying, oh my God, he's such a wall. I can't get through to him. He can't even express himself. He's just so hard and it frustrates me so much. You see? Now, some women take the responsibility to help men open up, because you want to experience your person as a human being, and at the core, you also don't want an aggressive man to be your partner, or you also don't want to exist in a world where men are aggressive and are threatening your safety. And on the other hand, you have people as well, men and women, still shaming men for wanting to open up and wanting to change the conversation about what makes a man and what constitutes a real man in the world. It gets difficult now because you have, as a man, you've been trained from a young age to remain strong, to be a rock. Don't express your emotions, just always, face forward. For the most part, it's to everyone's society as it has been structured, because we're in a very patriarchal society. It is to everyone's advantage that men are not in touch with their emotions. In fact, it costs less now, financially, economically. It costs less now to have men remain the way they are than to try to heal men and to rehabilitate them and to make them not be the way they are, or to raise boys in a way that does not include aggression or does not include suppressing their emotions. When we have to now say, okay, that method has not worked, we now have to build better men. It costs more. It means that us now, as the parents that are giving birth to boys, will now need to change our thinking about what makes a man, what makes a child, or what makes a boy, or what makes the differences between the two genders. We'd have to do a lot of unlearning, and we also have to also deal with our own traumas as well, and our own beliefs that influence the way that we've been doing things. And it costs a lot as well in terms of our relationships, because even when you change your ways or your parenting style as an individual, the reality is that your child will still exist in a world that is very much still patriarchal and still treat boys or treat girls this way or that way. It costs more to change many people at once, or change 4 or 5 people. It's a lot of effort. So the main issue at this particular point is that it is easier to just go with the status quo, not try to change anything, just take things as they are and just hope for the best. That is the sense that I'm getting. And I see the many gentle parenting guides, I see the videos, I've read the books, and I agree with them. But I also am aware of the fact that most people would not be willing to do the work, because it requires even a lot of emotional labor. The fact that you have to deal with your own anger issues as a parent before you try to train your child, it's a lot of effort, and I think a lot of people are not willing to do it. There's not a lot of resources to do it. People are just trying so hard to survive within this capitalist economy that they don't even have time to be better people and to be better parents. And that scares me, and it worries me that we're in this place where you have a small number of people saying, okay, I'm going to change my parenting style, I'm going to treat boy children better, because you want to create a world where people are changed and people are treated equally. And you have another group that say, well, but I like it when men are strong, I like it when men are this and that, until men are directly violent. You know, sometimes the violence is not direct and is not very evident. When at that point people are like, okay, it's just a man, it's okay, you should have, what did you do to provoke him, and stuff like that. And then when men now are evidently aggressive and violent, and they are part of the problems with crime in the country, and they are doing the hijackings and killing people and are sexually doing things to people, that's when people are like, oh my god, what is happening with men? Oh my god, what? You know what's happening with men. We all know what's happening with men. And are we going to say then we're going to do better? I'm not saying people wanting to do better. It's always trying to fix the symptoms. Oh my goodness, he's violent, he has done this, get him arrested. How about wanting to build men or build boy children into people in the society that won't have to be solved by prison? I think that could benefit us more in the long run than just everything else that patriarchy and capitalism and all these white supremacist beliefs have forced onto us. And I mean, I saw a book the other day. It says something, I think the title, says something along the lines of how to be a good parent when you don't have the time to be so. And you know, it just hit me. I didn't read the book, I just saw it in the store, and I was just thinking to myself, oh my goodness, part of the problems we have with parenting is because people just also don't have the time. Our parents are most of the time at work. When they come back, the only thing they can give you is just instruction. You have to learn the world by yourself. When you're learning the world by yourself, it's people that are also just trying to identify themselves that you're learning from, and people that have been taught in some areas of their lives as well that, well, aggression is the way. So you have these people that child-headedness, everyone is just heading themselves, and when parents have an opportunity to direct and to head homes, they do so in a very convenient manner. And that would be, stand up for yourself. I won't always be there. Stand up for yourself, be rough, be violent. There's no time. I think there's no time, there's no effort, and there's no will to build and to raise better people. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. Please read The Girl with the Louding Voice. It addresses child marriages in Africa, and I love it. And I think she's done a good job in the book. And yes, thank you so much for watching my video. I'm gonna see you next week. Bye bye.